Hey, a very good morning to one and all. I'm Praveen Kumar. Today we are going to see an enterprise level system called SupplySync. If you get into YouTube, many of the tutorials, nearly 99% of Django tutorials will teach you about CRUD API or CRUD applications or simple blog applications. But what if you need to build a software that will be used for millions of people and where people has to buy or book a same item at exact millisecond? How to implement that type of system to handle concurrent operations. So today I will walk you through my recent project and completed supply sync and inventory and order management system, which was completely built using Django and Django's REST framework, and along with some other tools like Redis and Celery. They are used for Redis as a messaging queue and also a catching system. So the task will be stored in the message queue of the Redis, and Celery will act as a background worker and picks up that jobs in the queue and do the heavy lifting without waiting the user. So let's walk into the actual system. So this application is completely Dockerized. So I have created a Docker Compose. So before getting into the code, we'll get into some theoretical. Yeah, objective. We need to build a production grade inventory and order management backend using Django and Django REST framework along with Celery and Redis. So for advanced transaction management techniques like row level blocking and background task processing with Celery and Redis caching strategies and role based access control. So background supplying backend engineering task. System will be used by warehouse staff, procurement managers, and system administration. So there will be this. The system will be used for many users. So how we are implementing so that everyone should use the system without waiting or without blocking. So core technologies and concepts. I have used Django and Django REST framework for the web framework and API development, and PostgreSQL for transaction management. So why I have used PostgreSQL? Because it gives us select for update row level locking to prevent race conditions. So where multiple users, where two users try to book or order a same system, and service level architecture. So instead of writing all the things in a view.py, how Django runs with views.py, every HTTP request hits the views.py. So we have adapted to the another pattern called service layer pattern, where the business logic is dedicated in service.py file. So why it makes highly testable, reusable, and decoupled from HTTP request response cycle. So this is our system architecture overview. The client, here the web dashboard or mobile app, or we can say even a curl request, curl command also in a client layer. It calls the HTTP request, the API gateway and application. Here our Django REST API acts as our API gateway, which runs on WSCA server. Its main task is to read or write data to supply sync database, which is our PostgreSQL, and pass out the request to the background processing like Celery worker. And Celery Beat and Celery works worker has different use case. Celery worker is used for event processing. So whenever any user clicks a button or user scrolls to the web page, so it will be done by Celery worker, which will helpful for storing events. And Celery Beat, a cron job. Cron is basically also known as a time. Based on some time, it need to do the some task. Beat will be helpful in schedule management. For example, you need to get the update for every 5 minutes. So Celery Beat will check the inventory and places a message in the queue our Redis, and Celery worker takes that queue, takes a message from the queue and process the message. So yeah, caching layer we have used as the Redis. So both as a Redis as a both catch and broker. So this is our technology stack: Python and Django REST framework, PostgreSQL, Redis, Celery with Redis as broker. Yeah, we have seen that. Celery Beat, periodic and scheduled tasks. Simple JWT. Do you know about JWT? JSON Web Tokens. It's an authentication module for API application or any application. 95% of the web applications or apps will be using this simple JWT authentication in production. So I will also explain the core concepts behind the simple JWT, how it uses access token and refresh token, and Django filters for dynamic filtering of products mainly, and DRF Spectacular, an open API documentation mainly for it needs to generate a Swagger UA defining all the API endpoints from the code it generates, and PyTest for testing, and PyTest Django, Docker and Docker Compose for infrastructure. So there will be no conflicts like that works on my system. It not work on another system. So Docker and Docker Compose will be helpful in that. When we are making an application containerized, it works at any system. So there will be no dependency transition or dependency management. For example, if our computer is installed with Python 3.11 or another system is downloaded Python 3.10, so there will be conflicts. Some methods will not be able to use that in another computer. So this makes not able to run it every system. So Docker Compose will makes helps us to run it anywhere because it uses containers. I will also tell you how this container works and how it was created using Docker Compose file. Yeah, and database configuration. So this is our core structure. Yeah. Firstly, our Docker Compose. What are the main services or containers working in our system? Yeah, this is our Docker Compose file where containers will be creating by seeing this Docker Compose file. So when you run Docker Compose, run our Docker Compose build, the containers will be built using this Docker Compose file. So you can ignore the version. It's next services, the names of our containers. So first container will be Postgres, mainly our database container, and that from Docker Hub it will be downloading Postgres 15 Alpine, a Linux based image, and there will be mainly two ports. One is host port and another one is the container port. Host port means where we are sending from the data, and container port means inside the running container. So both has to be communicate with each other, and this environment we are giving some credentials like database name, username, and password. So coming to the volumes, so data will be lost when our containers are removed and containers again created. So we need to manage that data in a secure. I mean, in our system we will be using push volumes. So in this path, the data will be stored between containers remove and start, and Redis will be downloaded from Docker Hub with the image Redis 7 Alpine, and again there will be two put numbers. Celery worker and Celery Beat, both their functionality. One is to pick the job from the Redis and do the task. And the Celery Beat means scheduling the task. I mean, cron jobs. For every 5 minutes, you need to get the stock, and for exact at 12 a.m. it need to generate this dashboard summary like that. It will be everything done by the Celery Beat, and put this message in the Redis, and Celery worker will pick that message and do its job. So volumes, it will be stored in Postgres data. So doc containers will be created based on the instructions given in the Docker file. So it acts as an image for the app. For example, we are creating the runtime as a Python, and we are downloading the image 3.1 to Slim, and env Python don't write bytecode 1 means we are saying Python to don't write this bytecode, because whenever the code is compiled, it will be compiled into an bytecode, so that machine understands, the CPU understands the bytecodes, not the raw language or English text. So we are setting it to 1 means it will be don't writing the Python bytecode. And our directory slash app means we are creating a folder inside the container, where we are working container will all the things will run inside that app for. And copy requirements dot txt, so we will be giving all the requirements that need to be run our project. So we can check out that requirement.txt. So what are the version, we need to pin the exact version of the tools we are using. We are using Django Rush framework like that, by Psycho PG to binary, and Redis, Celery. We need to convert the Python language to the SQL. So we need to be using PyPC to binary. It will act as an adapter, because our Python needs to talk with our database, which will be able to understand only SQL language, but our Python language will return objects. So that's why PyPC to binary works. That's it. Then run the requirements for txt to install inside the working directory. And copy dot dot means we'll be copying the source code from the project level. So that's it. And coming to the project structure, multiple apps will be there, and core is an app for shared utilities. For example, if we want to set the pagination or permission, all will be defined in this core app. And also again something called models. Yeah, based on these models, all the models will be using in the apps folder, because in apps there are multiple accounts, categories, inventory, products, all these are apps. As you know, we are implementing a soft delete pattern in this application, meaning in production, when a user deletes or the owner deletes something, they didn't delete completely from their software, I mean their database. They are changing just is deleted equal to false. For example, if we need historical purchases and orders, we need to fetch that too also. So that's why we are just changing is deleted equal to true when someone deletes that. So that's why we are using soft delete manager. And when they hit the get query set method, it will return all the things. Return super dot get query set. Query set means the data taken from the database, and filter is deleted equal to false. So we'll be getting only the things which are not deleted. And base model, we are defining once and using it everywhere, because created it, updated it, is deleted are the fields which will be using in every models of these apps. So once we create them and use it everywhere, it follows the DRY, which means don't repeat yourself pattern. So every model needs to have created it, updated, deleted. Once we are creating it here, we don't need to write there also. So in order to get all the objects, we'll be using models.manager, not the soft delete manager. So that's why we are overriding that. And constant sort by we are setting TTL, time to live, for catching. And I have created a custom exception handler with the help of REST framework exception model. So custom exception handler, it takes two parameters. One is execute exe and context. Exe is nothing but the actual object that crashes the code, and context contains something metadata like headers, payload, etc. So if the response is not none, we are returning error code as validation error. So we are getting the, if there is any internal server error, we are setting it to status 500, and error coding an internal server error. For example, if there are any typos or misspell in the code, it will be returning internal server error or any type of errors. And resource not found, resource 404 standard error, and duplicate error, source 409 conflict. Like that, I have created all the HTTP codes. And also lastly, clear insufficient stock exception. When there is in a not sufficient stock, we'll be raising this type of exception. So that's it. And models I have cleared. And pagination. Pagination is something, a technique used in building production grade applications, where we don't want to send everything to the API at once. For example, there are 50,000 of products. If we send everything through once an API, the API would not able to handle that. And the database choke, which is nothing but the Postgres has to load all the 50,000 rows into the memory, and applies the row level locking. So it will be taking more time. And another thing, the Django server would crash because picking all the things into the server's memory would crash. And another disadvantage is, so this API data will be used by many dashboards or mobile apps. So if you are able to send all the data to once at a time, for example, 50,000 of records means, for example, if you say Amazon or Flipkart or even Google, when you type or search for a something, it will be returning many things. But when you scroll down to the bottom, the Google will say one, two, and previous and next. These are called pages. So in one page, it will be showing 10 top 10 websites, and another page, it will be showing another 10 websites. Like that, it will be working. So this is called pagination. And we can also use an alternative like a limit offset pagination too, but this works well for enterprise applications. So class standard results pagination, it will be inheriting page number pagination. So default page number is 20. If client does not send any page size, with the default will be 20. Even it looks enough small enough for us, but it will be taking a lot of time if the number is very high. And maximum size equal to 100, defensive programming, nothing but if a hacker can send 50,000 pages at a once, so the server would crash again. So that's why we have used maximum page size for each request should be 20. And query size query pattern parameter would be the page size would define. So let me explain the math behind this. So yeah, when a user call get request with API v1 products, and pay is equal to 2 and pay size equal to 20. So Django calculates this in 2 minus 1 1 into 20 20. So it skips the first 20 rows and shows us the next 20 rows. So yeah, Postgres instantly returns us just 20 rows. And Django packages them into JSON, which will be helpful for understanding, and includes helpful metadata like next page number. So I have mentioned there will be next and previous buttons. So yeah, these are all the bottlenecks that can be identified. Database choke means Postgres has to lock and read 50,000 rows at into memory at once. Server crash. Yeah, sending a 50 MB JSON payload of 50,000 over a 4G mobile network will take 30 seconds. So yeah, nowadays some people are being using 4G mobile network, so they are not able to get all the things at a once. So pagination helps in this way. Yeah, client crash if the mobile receives 50,000 items. Trying to rendering all the 50,000 UI cards will be compulsorily freeze the phone. So that's it. If we want to get the first 20 records, we'll be setting as page number page equal to 1. 1 minus 1, 0 into 20, it's 0. So what Django tells to Postgres is skip the 0 rows and give me the only next 20. I means 1 to 20 rows will be available. So that's how pagination works. And permission sort by, for example, checking is admin user or is warehouse manager. So like that, I have created nearly 7 to 8 permissions. And the throttles, nothing but login rate limiting throttle. For example, a hacker can send incorrect passwords. For example, say 10 to 15 per minute. But what it will learn, it will crashes the server. I mean, a lot of resource has been used. So that's why, for example, when an IP address is hitting more than 5 times incorrect passwords, we need to set that into the blacklist. So yeah, we will be raising too many login attempts exception. What we written in exception too many. I think it's a default method. I think yeah, it's a default method. Too many login attempts exception defined in the above. We'll be setting as a HTTP 429 code. So we'll be storing that IP address in the cache. So that's it. And this is the main project settings. We need to change your secret key. And third party apps I have used Django REST framework. All the things I have been explained. And the middleware, it will be helpful for inbound and outbound message request checking. So these are all nothing but default settings and default auto field. So we are setting into big auto field mainly for primary key fields. And user models. Django default provides an user model, but we have defined a custom user model that will be set it in the models.py. I'll show you that. And REST framework configuration, DRF framework, what we are using, simple JWT authentication, and paginator class we are using. You can see that pagination.py in core, and the class name is standard results pagination, and exception handler, and default schema class drf spectacular.openapi.autoschema. So instead of sending request to the each endpoint will take a lot of time. So what if the Django spectacular DRF for spectacular itself automatically generating in Swagger UI where it contains all the endpoints. I'll show you that too. Wait for a minute. So yeah, it will be looking like this. It will consist of all the API endpoints. These will be generated based on the code we have written. And JWT configuration. So we are setting the access token lifetime to 60 and refresh token to 1 day. So this is a new concept, JWT configuration. It will be used in almost 95% of the mobile apps and web apps for security reason. So traditional method would be a session based or cookies based. It will be taking a lot of time because for every request the server has to check who is whether the session ID has saved in the database or not. So for each request checking the user is valid or not, it's not a good thing. So that where it takes a lot of time and computation. So JWT works in another method which is more optimized than normal session based. Let's walk into this JWT. Yeah, there will be mainly two tokens. One is access token and refresh token. So for every request, the access token will be attached with the request, and server sees that okay, this request has contains that access token, and server has its key. So mathematically, it signs with the key and checks that this request is valid, and the process has been done. And the algorithm we have using HS256, and signing key, the secret key we have shared. We have set it in the .env file. Okay, let's get into the JWT authentication. Yeah, as mentioned, older system will use session cookies. For every cookie, when you time click a button, the server asks the database who owns session 123. So the problem if we have having 10,000 of users clicking buttons every second, our database needs to check every time. So the JWT solution statelessness. A JWT contains your actual data right inside the token. The server does not need to ask the database who you are. So in simple words, it acts as an VIP band tied to our hand. So when you are entering any party or in a party or any, so we are giving any VIP band. So the security won't check every time who you are within the like checking in the ledger book or in the database. They will simply say, okay, you have your VIP band, you can come in. So that's how the real world application. It saves millions of database queries for every time who owns this session 123 like that. So the JW took like a long string of gibberish. Yeah, it starts with EY like that. It has mainly three parts. One is the header, tells the server what algorithm was used to sign it. Payload contains the JSON data we are sending with the and signature, a hashed combination of header, payload, and your server's secret key. For example, if a attacker or hacker tries to change the request body from, for example, the payload changes from role staff to role admin, the signature will instantly become invalid and Django will reject the request with 401 unauthorized. So this is how JWT authentication works with a better security compared to the cookies, session cookies. That's the concept of JWT configuration. And again, one thing we need to get the fresh access token for every 1 hour. So if we have your refresh token inside the background, the access token will be again generated using this refresh token. So we have defined an endpoint slash token hyphen refresh where it uses the refresh token and generates a fresh access token. That's how it works. And Celery configuration, because Python returns simple objects or complex objects, it does not understood by Celery. So every request or data it is incoming or outgoing, it will be sent in JSON format only because it will be more readable, and most systems will understand JSON, which is nothing but a key value pair. And we are also setting the Celery time zone and open API documentation settings. These are nothing but we have to generate our Swagger UI where we have to endpoint all the API endpoints. So we have seen this title and description. I'll show you once. Yeah, title and the description. I have seen. Yeah, and for salary bid schedule, there will be mainly two methods. One is auto invalidate low stack cache. For every 5 minutes, we need to clear the low stock cache and generate daily operations summary, because at every 12 a.m. in the midnight we need to generate the daily operation summary. So Celery Beat will schedules that and puts the message in the Redis message queue, and Celery worker will take that message and process the data. And caches we have used Redis and the configuration it here. So that's it. And development.py. So we are importing everything from the dot base we have what we have created. And for production we have set it to debug equal to false, and local development we are setting equal to true. So yeah, caches and everything will be written here. That's it. And URLs. So these are nothing but all the apps URLs we have created. And celery.py. So we are setting the app.auto discover task means for it has to be discover its on its own. We are just creating an instance with a Celery class and setting a name it as app. So everything will be written here. So that's it. And I have created different apps, mainly accounts responsible for creating a user account and validating a password. I have used RE, regular expression in Python, a module in Python. So let's see this documentation. The module provides regular expression. Yeah. When a user is creating their password, it should contain at least 8 letters, not 8 character long, and it should contain capital letters and small letters and not small letters, a digit and a special character. So that's how it works. If not possible, if any of this condition was not done, satisfied, if any of this condition was not satisfied, we are raising an validation error with a simple message. And you can see the models of the accounts. So yeah, this is the custom user model we have built. So you see that the base we are inheriting the base model that were created in core/models.py. I show you because every model in this apps folder, in this accounts, categories, inventory, products, every model will be using the base model. So that's the models. As we are moving to the service layer architecture, only the core business logic will be written in the service.py, and views.py will be able to just taking an HTTP request and pass it the data to the serializer, where serializer has to done two tasks. One is translation and another one is the acting as a bouncer. So translating means every data should be translated to JSON, and the bouncer means it will checks the format, I mean the type of the request. For example, a request containing data like email, in the payload it contains email field. It should the email should contain at the rate of gmail, or anything at the rate of symbol should be there. So it will checks with serializers dot email field. So in that way required equal to true, when a user is registering, all the things will be done at here. Services.py, just our core of our project. So just for creating registering a user and logging in user. So yes, what happens when a user logs out? So we are just making the token to the blacklist. So that's it. So the hacker cannot take that token and access to our database or server. So that's it. And here are start by, we are defining the path about how the endpoint should be. So in our core project, yeah, you are start by. So when the first request should be enter this SupplySync/setting URLs. So when a user types API/v1/app, okay, it assumes that all the URLs hitting this point would be sent to the app/account/URLs. So when the last endpoint, I mean slash register, means it will be sending our view to register view. And again register view has to done two things. One is sending the data to serialization, and serializer will send the data to our services service.py file. So in that way we have created categories about the categories of the product, and products, what are the purchase orders, reports, sales orders, and warehouses. So this is completely an enterprise level inventory management system, completely built using Python and Django and some other technology stack mentioned here. So I have mentioned all the setup commands, how to access the Swagger UI also. You can check out my project at a SupplySync inventory and order management platform. Okay, let's get into the practical. First, I need to make sure the Docker Compose is running. Yeah, it's in paused state. Yeah, supply syncing is not able to run. Let's run the project. So you can see that everything was built using Docker Compose file. Docker uses layering strategy. So once able to, I mean, once the data is written, we don't need to again build that. So it uses layers. And in another terminal, we will be running our server, Python server, Django server. Make sure your virtual environment is in activated state. Yeah, all the containers has been started. Let's check in Docker desktop also. Yeah, all the containers are in healthy state. Okay, let's try to access some endpoint. So currently I'm not having my access token. So I just need to log in once. The access token will be generated, and it will be sending with each request. So for testing purpose, I have created a mail. Admin at the rate of. And remember one thing, we are not storing the passwords as strings. We are converting that strings to the user request password will be converted into the hash. And whenever a user types the password, it does not checks with the string. Okay, let's continue our practical demonstration within the Swagger UI. So yeah, currently I'm able to try to log in. So just we have created an endpoint with login. So yeah, I have. So these are my test credential. So yeah, the access token and the refresh token all are created. So let's log in to the with the help of. So yeah, a server created and accepted us with the secret key. So now you can able to access these endpoints. Otherwise, you are not able to access these type of endpoints. Okay, let me try without. So yeah, you are check. You are saying that this is not able to log in without our access token. Then you can see this all are able to access. I have shown you within the another web page, so you can think that the endpoint will be working, or you can access all the endpoints in this Swagger UI within the endpoint API slash schema slash Swagger UI. This is another point called token refresh. It will ask us for a refresh token and generates us an access token. So let's try that too. So every application will refresh for every 1 hour, but for practical demonstration, I am showing you how refresh token will be helpful to generate an access token. Okay, let's check why is it not. Okay, let's change the format, then try it again. What's the required field? Okay, let's say what are the categories for say. So yeah, just I have created an. So I have added only two products. That's why we have seen the error because there are there are not number of products. So yeah, you can see the type of electronics. Yeah, you can check this out because electronics itself is a category. It does not have any parent category, but you can see computers will be under the category of electronics. So the parent category will be ID number one will be assigned it here. That's how the categories work. And if we want to post request will be helpful for send data to the server, and you can just get the tree format. It uses recursion will be helpful because it calls itself. So yeah, what are the products? It's a parent product and parent category, and it's a children category. That how it works. So yeah, you can check what are the type of products with details, because I have used filtering here, Django filter, not here I think. Yeah, it's here. So that's how I have created all the endpoints. You can test with your data because it is not able to test all the API endpoints at here. So that's it for today. This is my complete. This is my SupplySync inventory and order management platform, which was built using Django and Celery and some other tools like Redis and DRF speculator. So and everything I have mentioned. And if you have any doubts, please comment it down. Thank you.